Perfect. All right. Good evening. Let's come to order and go on the record, please. I'm Charlotte Mitchell. I'm chair of the North Carolina Utilities Commission. I now call for hearing docket number G9 sub 837, which is in the matter of application of Piedmont Natural Gas Company Incorporated for an adjustment of rates, charges, and tariffs applicable to service in North Carolina, continuation of its IMR mechanism, adoption of new depreciation rates for its utility property, regulatory asset accounting treatment for certain operating expenses, and other relief. Before we proceed further, as is required by the State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest. Inquire at this time as to whether any member of the Commission has a known conflict. I will report that I do not have a conflict with the matters coming before us in this proceeding, so we will proceed. All right, on February 29th, 2024, as is required by Rule R117 sub A of the Rules and Regulations of the North Carolina Utilities Commission, Piedmont Natural Gas Company Incorporated, or Piedmont, filed a notification of intent to file a general rate application with the Commission. Thereafter, on April 1st, 2024, Piedmont filed its general rate case application with the Commission, in which it requests the authority to adjust and increase its rates and charges for natural gas service in North Carolina. Included with the application was direct testimony and exhibits of witnesses supporting the application. In its application, Piedmont specifically requests an increase and revisions to its base rates and charges for customers to account for changes in rate base, operating revenues, costs, and capital structure that have occurred since Piedmont's last general rate case proceeding in 2021, including the roll-in of safety and integrity-related capital investments, most of which are currently being recovered under Piedmont's Integrity Management Rider, or IMR mechanism. The increase requested by Piedmont would produce additional overall annual North Carolina retail revenues of approximately $149 million, which is an increase of approximately 11.7% over its current revenues. On April 22nd, 2024, the Commission issued an order establishing general rate case and suspending the proposed new rates for up to 270 days. On June 12th, 2024, the Commission issued an order scheduling hearings, establishing procedural and filing requirements, and requiring public notice. The order scheduled hearings for the purpose of receiving testimony from public witnesses, including hearings that were held in Wilmington, in Charlotte, and in High Point, as well as the hearing we are holding tonight by way of video conference technology. The order further scheduled a hearing to commence on September 17th, 2024, in Raleigh for the purpose of receiving testimony and other evidence from the expert witnesses of the parties. Piedmont's application and testimony has been supplemented by the company several times, the last of which occurred on July 29th, 2024. The public staff, which represents the using and consuming public, has been made a party to this proceeding in accordance with North Carolina General Statute Section 62-15 sub D. The public staff represents the using and consuming public and has conducted its own independent review of Piedmont's application. The public staff has set forth its recommendations to the Commission in its testimony filed in this docket on August 13th. You may access the non-confidential portions of the public staff's testimony on the Commission's website. In addition to the public staff, the following parties have been allowed to intervene in this proceeding: Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 4, or SIG for 4, the Carolina Utility Customers Association Incorporated, or CUCA, and Nucor Steel Hertford, or Nucor. All right, that brings us to tonight. I now call upon counsel for the parties to introduce themselves for purposes of the record, and we will begin with Piedmont.
Good evening, Chair Mitchell, members of the Commission, Brian Franklin with McGuire Woods on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas.
Good evening, Mr. Franklin. All right, public staff.
Good evening. My name is Megan Yost. I'm a staff attorney with the public staff of the North Carolina Utilities Commission, representing the using and consuming public.
Good evening, Ms. Yost. All right, any other counsel on for parties to the proceeding? All right, I'm not hearing any. So we will proceed. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to hear from Piedmont's customers regarding their concerns with the pending application. Each public witness that has registered in advance in accordance with the instructions and the Commission's order will be given an opportunity to testify under oath should he or she wish to do so. In order to facilitate this hearing, we will use the following procedures. First, in conducting the hearing, the Commission functions in a judicial capacity. We will follow, for the most part, the North Carolina rules of civil procedure and the rules of evidence. Because the commission is functioning in a quasi-judicial capacity, I cannot respond to your questions. Rather, I'm here tonight to hear your testimony, receive the evidence from you, which is in the form of your testimony. And in addition, for these reasons, if you choose to testify tonight, you will be asked to affirm the truthfulness of your testimony before you deliver it. Second, public witnesses will appear by audio connection only. I will appear by video, as will the attorneys for the parties, and audio connection as well. Any public witness that wishes to view a live video of the proceeding may access the stream on YouTube, which is linked from the commission's homepage. However, be sure to mute your computer, and when you're called upon to testify tonight, to avoid feedback. This hearing is being transcribed by our court reporter, and it is critical that we limit all interference with her ability to hear me and to hear those of you who are testifying tonight. Third, the public witnesses will be called on to testify in the order in which you all have called in tonight. When it's your turn to speak, our WebEx administrator will send you a request to unmute your line. You'll hear the message, you are being asked to unmute yourself. To unmute, press *6. It's important that you listen for this message. Once you unmute yourself, please state your name to signify that you are unmuted, and we can begin. At that time, I'll ask you to provide an affirmation as to the truthfulness of your testimony. And once you have provided that affirmation, the attorney for the public staff, Ms. Yost, will ask you a series of questions, and then you will be allowed to deliver your testimony. To ensure that all witnesses have an opportunity to participate, witnesses will be limited to 3 minutes to testify. Counsel for any party may ask questions of the witnesses. In addition, the commission will have the opportunity to ask questions as well. This means that if you provide testimony, you may be asked questions by the attorneys or by me. However, as a reminder, the commission and the attorneys for the parties are not allowed to respond to your questions during this hearing tonight. All right, with that, we are ready to begin. I will ask counsel whether there are any preliminary matters that we need to address before we get started with our witnesses.
Chair Mitchell, no preliminary matters. Just wanted to make sure that I alerted you and members of the commission that we do have a member of the customer experience team for Piedmont here on the WebEx available for any customers that if there's any account issues or anything like that, we have somebody here that can communicate with them off the record at that time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Franklin. Ms. Yost, anything from the public staff?
Just wanted to note that because we're not in person, if there are questions that come up that customers would like to ask of the public staff after the hearing, you may call 919-733-0978 or email me at megan.jost@psncuc.nc.gov.
Okay. All right. With that, I believe we are ready to begin. So, Mr. McCoy, if you would please unmute our first witness.
I'm Robert G-9. I'm just unmuted.
All right, Mr. G-9, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, Ms. Yost, you may take it away.
Thank you. Mr. G-9, could you please state and spell your full name for the court reporter?
My first name, Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T. Last name, G-9, G-M-E-I-N-E-R.
Thank you. And what is your address?
520 Carteret Place, Fayetteville, North Carolina, 28311.
And are you a Piedmont customer?
Yes.
All right. And do you have a statement you'd like to provide this evening?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So in addition to being a Piedmont customer, I'm also an assistant professor of financial economics at Methodist University. Prices, fluctuations are a lot of my research and my work. And I noticed after seeing the proposed increase that the Henry Hub natural gas spot price, which you can see at Federal Reserve Economic Data, is below 2021 levels, far below 2022 levels, and somewhat below 2023 levels. So gas prices have been coming down at the wholesale level. That price has not been going up, which puzzles me regarding the need to increase residential and commercial rates. To put some figures behind this, throughout 2021, prices were from $2 to $5 per million BTUs at the Henry Hub. Throughout 2022, it was from $4 to $10. Throughout 2023, it was from $2 to $3. And aside from one sporadic jump in January of this year, it hasn't really gone above $2.50. So we're seeing wholesale gas prices that are already much lower than in the recent several years. I also notice that small and medium-sized businesses are facing a much higher increase in percentage terms than large businesses. Now, I'm very well aware that costs of serving residences and small businesses are higher than serving large businesses. I don't really have a problem from my PhD economist perspective for why the price has to be higher, but the only reason I can see why it should increase at a higher rate is if the costs of serving are increasing at a higher rate. And that is not just a matter of inflation. This appears to me, as someone who's published peer-reviewed research on inflation and political capture, as a favor to big businesses when small businesses are struggling much more than large firms. And like I've said, costs of serving residents and small businesses are higher, but I don't think that there's any real basis in wholesale costs or other costs for worsening their situation more than for large business. If it's inflation that's causing the need to increase prices, then that should apply pretty equally in percentage terms to all customers. Lastly, I think there are some detrimental effects toward not charging for military transportation. I see that that's going to be reduced. Citizens and businesses pay taxes to support the military. We're effectively being double taxed by subsidizing this service for them, and it does not encourage them to be fuel efficient. So to sum this up, as far as I can tell, your wholesale prices have come down. I'm sure your other costs have come up, but I see very little basis for either the need to increase rates this much, and especially no basis for the rate structure to be changing in percentage terms so drastically. And that concludes my remarks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Geminer. Let me see if there are questions for you from counsel for the parties. I'll ask Piedmont first.
No questions.
Okay, Ms. Yost from the public staff.
No questions.
All right, Mr. Geminer, thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you for hearing me.
All right, Mr. McCoy, unmute the next witness, please.
Yes, this is Derek Reese.
All right, let me see. Mr. Reese, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
All right, Ms. Yost, you may take it away.
Good evening. Could you please state and spell your name for the court reporter?
Yes, Derek Reese, DERRICKREESE.
Thank you. And what's your address?
It's 6014 Colonial Garden Drive, Huntersville, North Carolina, 28078.
Thank you. And Mr. Reese, are you a customer of Piedmont Natural Gas?
Yes, I am.
All right. And do you have a statement you'd like to provide this evening?
Yeah, I have a simple statement, but it mostly comprises of 3 questions. In the statement itself, it's more 3 questions than a statement. But the statement part is of course, I disagree with the rate increase. Reading over everything that I've seen from Piedmont's website and information from North Carolina Public Utilities site, I really see no justifiable cause as a customer for a rate increase except for some expenses for operating or having to pay to the federal government. My 3 questions are, and they don't have to be answered, it's just basically for pondering the rate increase itself, and just something to think over. The three questions I have is, the first question is, how will customer experience be enhanced? I was reading the Piedmont's website about the rate increase, and one of the first things they mentioned was the enhancing of the customer experience. And I wanted to know exactly what experience for the customers will be enhanced by the rate increase of 11.7% over time. The second question I have is, while studying the 8K SEC filings dated August 14, 2024 for Piedmont Natural Gas, there was the selling of some securities to several underwriters that totaled $375 million, which is 5.10% of the senior notes, which were due to mature in 2035. And I wanted to know how were those profits being assessed to Piedmont Natural Gas's usage and better propagating the business instead of passing those rate increases to customers. The last question I had was, how will the 12-month extension enable flowback to customers, and what type of flowback will benefit the customers over the 12-month extension request of the excess deferred income taxes? So those are the questions that I had. Like I said, they don't necessarily have to be answered. I understand for time constraint, but I just wanted to pose the questions out there in the meeting. I thank you all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reese. Let me see if there are questions for you from the company.
No questions.
Okay, Ms. Yost from the public staff.
No questions.
All right, Mr. Reese, we appreciate your coming out tonight and you're providing your testimony to us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Mr. McCoy, please unmute the next witness.
Yes, my name is Matthew Carnegie, and I'm unmuted.
All right,
Can you
Mr.
hear me?
Carnegie, do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Ms. Yost.
Good evening. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Matthew Carnegie. Last name is spelled Kornegay.
Thank you. And what is your address?
My address is 227 Woodlake Drive, Monroe, North Carolina, 28110.
And are you a Piedmont customer?
I am.
All right. And do you have a statement you'd like to provide this evening?
Yes, I do. Just some of the same kind of concerns as the last two testimonies. I've been a natural gas consumer for the last couple of years after being on LP gas for over a decade. And I really thought that natural gas was supposed to be cheaper in a whole than LP gas. And I found out that when I moved from Greenville, North Carolina to Monroe, that the LP or the natural gas was almost double the cost per cubic foot than LP gas was. And so now, after being a consumer for the last 2.5 years, I'm seeing that a rate increase not of 11.7%, but for residential service of 15.3%. It's only 11.7 as a whole. And I am noticing that the large firm general services and large interruptible general services are getting a reduction of 10.7% and 14.5%. Now, I assume that is to try to help them alleviate maybe some, cost, but I assure you that is typically, their savings is not typically passed on to the purchaser or the consumer. And in fact, they are more than likely going to increase their profit margins, which I assume is the case with Piedmont as well. And as the other two testimonies mentioned, that the price increase has gone up over the years. And typically, I do run a small business, and typically our operating costs are built into our prices when we service a client or an industry. And it seems that I must be ignorant of how utilities work, but it seems that they are trying to get all their money back over the last several years of upgrading the equipment and the services in one fell swoop. I mean, I guess the convenience or the efforts provided with new equipment or updating old equipment, how much efficiency that's going to play as far as delivering us sustainable energy kind of baffles me, because it should be something that as a utility should be taken care of as part of an operating an industry in their nature, and passing the buck, so to speak, down to the consumer, which usually happens anyway, especially to the residential service, which is the large majority of the shareholders or the consumers of Piedmont. Doesn't seem to be fair, in my opinion. And as another testimony said, that the military transportation services is seeing a 0%, looks like minus 100% increase. So it's almost, I think they're getting subsidized completely, and we do already do that in our taxes. Even though the increase may not seem substantial overall, winter being the highest month because of heating, it's going to drastically increase our bills, and these rates, the revenue changes of $25.92 on them, that's an average. So that's not stating how large the family is. That number can change depending on the usage. So this is just a very generic, no one knows how many of the 810,000 retail customers are using. And yes, that may increase some for larger businesses, but with the reduction of the rate, it seems to be getting passed down to the residents, which are already struggling in this high inflation economy. And so I just thank you for your time and my remarks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carnegie. Let me see if there are questions for you from council, starting with the company.
No questions.
Okay, Ms. Yost from the public staff.
No questions.
All right, Mr. Carnegie, I appreciate your testimony tonight and taking the time to be here with us, and we appreciate your coming out.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, Mr. McCoy, we'll take the next witness.
Tiffany Rich.
All right, Ms. Rich, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Yost, you may take it away.
Good evening, Ms. Rich. Could you please state your name for the court reporter?
Okay, it's Tiffany, Tiffany, Rich, Rich.
Thank you. And what's your address?
2207 Dinsmore Street, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27401.
All right. And are you a customer of Piedmont?
Yes. The bill
right.
comes in my father's name, but I'm in the household.
Okay. Do you have a statement you'd like to give this evening?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I am completely opposed to the rate increase as I look at the revenues, like they said, it'll increase $149 million, which you already have a present revenue over $691 million. I just think it's ridiculous that we as customers have to continue on paying a higher rate in gas for what they said they were trying to make it more return fair for their investors and stockholders and the improvements. We just had a rate increase. So I just wanted to state that I'm opposed to it. I looked at the fact that they had a 12-month extension on their excess deferred income taxes that also fell back on the customers. And it's apparent to me that the customers are paying for everything, which is not allowing us to afford more, outside of the utilities. So I'm opposed to the increase. I don't see why we need to go up 15.3%. We just had an increase, and that's just pretty much what I wanted to say, that I'm really opposed against it.
Okay, Ms. Rich, let me see if there are questions for you from council. Mr. Franklin?
No questions.
Okay, Ms. Yost?
Questions?
All right. Ms. Rich, I appreciate your testimony tonight and you are taking the time to be here with us. Thank you for coming out. All right,
Thank you.
absolutely. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, Mr. McCoy, call the next witness, please.
That is all the callers.
Okay. At this point, it looks like we have come to the end of our to the conclusion of our hearing, as there are no additional callers on the line. I appreciate everybody being here with us tonight and providing their testimony for our consideration as we deliberate on this rate case. With that, we will be adjourned in this public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.